Hello, awards watchers. Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here to talk about the SAG Award nominations for film specifically. I'm joined by my fellow editors Chris Beecham, Joyce Ang, Marcus James Dixon, Paul Sheehan, and Susan Wazina. Now, one of the interesting headlines of the Golden Globe nominations, at least in terms of our predictions, is that we got 20 out of 25 nominees correct on the film side that we were predicting.
I think you mean SAG, Daniel. You
said
SAG.
Sorry. SAG Awards.
We do every award here at Gold Derby, but today is SAG. But we can
been
talk
a long week.
In terms of the Globes, if you'd like.
It's been a long week. So 20 out of 25 SAG Award nominations we correctly predicted. A couple of those big surprises came in the race for film ensembles. No, The Favorite, and no, I'm forgetting what else was snubbed even. But
Vice.
Vice. No Beale Street either. And then instead we got Bohemian Rhapsody, which was a big surprise. And we got a Black Klansman. So start with
But let's focus on the fact. First of all, Daniel, you mentioned that the site as a whole. We get these odds compiled by experts, people like us, the editors, people that have done well in the past, and users in general. So if you had just stuck with the odds, you would have gotten 20 out of 25, which I think is 80%, if my math is right, isn't it?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
And of this rogues gallery you're looking at, people, only one person got 80% or better, right, Chris?
I think I did that this morning, and I did not go strictly by the odds. I had Emily Blunt for Mary Poppins, not Quiet Place. I forget some of the other ones I had, but I did things like I swapped Beale Street out yesterday for Vice, but that's a wash. That didn't help me at all. But for the large part, I went with. I think we've all felt like 3 or 4 were pretty locked in, and it was those last slots that were killing us. I'll also say on Ensemble, if you were to take The Favorite, Green Book, Widow's Vice, Beale Street, and you told me those were the 5, that would make just as much sense as the 5 they did. I mean, that you could have predicted those 5 and been 100% wrong. That's how good the ensembles were this year, and I think a lot of those would have gotten in any other year.
And it's interesting about the ensemble category, which is unique at these awards. It doesn't necessarily correlate to Best Picture winners in terms of the winners of ensemble and the winner of the Oscar, but you almost always need at least a nomination for ensemble to win the Oscar. The only exceptions were Braveheart in 1995, and of course, just last year, The Shape of Water. So is this the best news A Star is Born could have ever asked for, that the SAG Awards kind of held back films like Green Book and The Favorite, which also could have been favorites, Joyce?
Yeah, because all of its major rivals missed out. And like the ensemble nominees, it's basically blockbusters plus Black Klansman. It's like the best popular film award. Like 4 of them made over 100 million. And it's also interesting because most of them came out earlier. I think Bohemian was the latest release, and that was November 2nd, so still early November, and it was a huge box office hit. But everything else came out earlier in the year, and we know SAG loves things that come out early. Like last year they did The Big Sick, and that was a summer thing. And this year is Crazy Rich Asians. So a lot of like the later releases did not make the ensemble lineup. They got some individual nominations, like The Favorite got 3 nominations for its actresses. So, and we know they don't blind vote. Like last year, they snubbed Phantom Thread and The Post, and we all thought they would just name check these big stars. So I think it's a screener thing if they just did not watch certain movies. And then it's like ensemble was just really tough this year too, because like you said, there's, you could have a lineup of 5 that were not nominated, and it would have made total sense.
A lot of people were wondering whether A Star is Born would be La La Landed today. That is, the leads get in, but the ensemble gets snubbed. which would have really hurt its Best Picture chances at the Oscars. So
But it was more of an ensemble film than La La Land. Like, I
seeing
think that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just think like Green Book is a better comparison to La La Land because that's more of a two-hander than A Star Is Born, even though the story is about, you know, Jackson and Allie.
So, Susan, what do you make of that ensemble Oscar correlation given last year with Shape of Water not even being, and that had an ensemble that had individual SAG nominations, and I think it had a pretty rich ensemble, and it didn't get nominated by SAG, but it went on to win the Oscar. I mean, do you think that?
Well, what did win last year?
What's that?
What?
3 Billboards.
What? Oh, Billboards. Yeah. Well, it didn't. I mean, that made the cut as Best Picture and was probably one of the 3 most likeliest titles. But yeah, I don't know. You know, I think with Best Picture, it's like I've said this before. It's almost a compromise because the way that the voting has to be done, and it's not. I mean, I would think Billboards would have won, but it didn't.
So what Daniel, you talked about the snubs in ensemble, but what about the fact that Ethan Hawke and Regina King are
both Reginas.
Both Regina, but particularly Regina King, because I've been the one following the Critics Awards, not only in New York and LA, but we write about every sort of regional group, and they're both just piling up these wins, as is Roma for Best Picture. So, I mean, what does those two being overlooked mean for the Oscars?
I think Ethan Hawke has been on the bubble this whole time. Like, I think he's maybe 4th or 5th in that Best Actor lineup. So it's kind of surprising he wasn't nominated here at the SAG Awards, but I don't think it was totally out of left field. Kind of shocker. The Regina King one was just weird. Like, I don't know where that came from. That snub.
Did they not watch Beale Street? Maybe they didn't get that screener or something.
I don't. I mean,
plug it in.
I would blame like screeners or something like that, but like, you know, because there are late movies like Phantom Thread and The Post that don't get in. But you know, even though this has a late release date, you know, December, Beale Street has been around. Like, it's been screening for a while. Like, you know, they should have been able to see it. So I can't see a reason why they wouldn't have. They would have missed it. Like just like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But I think it's not even just screeners, Marcus. I mean, there's a couple of thousand people that are on the nominating committee, which sounds like a lot, but you know, you do a screening in LA or a screening in New York, and you invite the as many SAG nom-com people as you can, and there's a Q&A afterwards. And I've said this about Beale Street from the start, which is Barry Jenkins and his cast are such great ambassadors for their film. I mean, Barry Jenkins is so passionate about it, and it really presents it so well that he's so winning unto himself. And Joyce, you're the queen of all stats. Remind me about how Barry Jenkins' last film did at the SAG Awards.
They didn't really go for it. It didn't win ensemble. Mahershala won, which really helps him win the Oscar, but it lost ensemble to Hidden Figures.
Well, I'll say this about Beale Street. It's screened far more often than Vice has, and Vice got in Bale and Adams. Vice is really one of the last, and Mary Poppins. Those Mary Poppins and Vice were literally the last 2 movies.
I think Beale Street was just maybe too subtle. Like, I think if you got late screeners of Vice and Mary Poppins, you're more inclined to watch those first than Beale Street because it's like, it's Mary Poppins and it's Christian Bale as Dick Cheney. I've heard a ton about this. I'm going to watch this right now. And then you just kind of forget about Beale Street.
And don't you think, I always remember with Anne Hathaway a couple of years ago with Les Miserables and how she almost had for 6 months, that trailer, was really her reel,
That's her Oscar scene.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder with Mary Poppins and Vice, I mean, all of the coming attractions and things, I mean, they really, you look at Vice and you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe Christian Bale's turned himself into Dick Cheney. And
Well, I think Disney has put up basically half the movie in various formats,
Right,
just
right.
little clips and things. So
Yeah, and they're both more like the performances that were nominated, like they're more flashy. Like Regina King's very subtle. She's very good in Beale Street, but it's a very quiet, subtle performance.
I don't know what to do with her anymore.
Mahershala, like, I mean, Mahershala for Moonlight, the last Barry Jenkins film that did get those 3 nominations, and it won for Mahershala. So it just seems odd to me that, like, Regina King was on track to like be the kind of like Monique or J.K. Simmons of the year. They just kind of like romp through everything. And this is
now she has to be a Marcia Gay Harden or a Christoph Waltz.
I will say this is the best news Amy Adams has had in a long time.
She's totally winning now.
And so Joyce, explain what you mean about Marcia Gay Harden and Christoph Waltz.
They're the only Oscar winners who did not get SAG nominations, and Marcia is the only one without a Globe nomination either, because Christoph Waltz won the Globe for Django.
And Chris, what were you going to say about Regina?
I don't know what to do with her anymore. We had these alarm bells.
I don't know.
Well, because
I think she can still get the nomination.
But there's only been the 2. I'm going to tell you, I don't think if she does not get in at BAFTA, it's going to be just like Stallone, who got in at Globes and won at Globes. He didn't get SAG BAFTA, and it was huge alarm bells for me, but everybody was predicting him, so I predicted him, and then he couldn't win the Oscar. So I think Regina is absolutely getting an Oscar nomination, but boy, I want to see what BAFTA does. This might not be a BAFTA kind of a film. You know they're going to go for Rachel and Emma, because that's going to be one of their strongest contenders. They probably, of any group, might go Claire Foy, who did not get in today.
Margot Robbie.
Maybe. Maybe Emily Blunt gets in for Quiet Place over there. I don't know what's going to happen at BAFTA.
But this is to my point about the in-person screenings. Margot Robbie getting in for this Mary Queen of Scots, which has been fairly low profile this season. You have to sort of think, how many in-person appearances did she make? And did that make the difference?
Well, Paul, let's talk about Black Panther. You and I still have it at #1 in our Oscar predictions. And I told Chris yesterday that.
Always. I started off in August predicting Black Panther. I have never left Black Panther.
I told Chris yesterday if it gets snubbed at SAG Ensemble, which I thought it was a lock today, then I would remove it from my #1 position. But I don't have to do that. Now, DGA is coming up, and Ryan Coogler is going to have a hard time getting in at DGA. But today was a good day.
Why would he have a hard time?
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't gotten in anywhere, even with Critics' Choice with 14 nominations in that category.
Yeah, that was a bummer. When I saw they had 7 nominees at Critics' Choice, I immediately looked for Ryan's name.
Is Black Panther the front runner here at SAG? Without,
or it could be Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be. I feel like this could be a kind of hidden figure situation where the winner here may not tell us who's going to win the Oscar. Like, I don't see A Star Is Born winning this, and so I feel like it could go any number of ways. I think it could go. I think it probably is between Black Panther, Crazy Rich Asians, maybe even Black Klansman. Like that film has been overperforming. Like, I don't know. It's just.
Well, I got 2 questions in about Black Panther. Is any movie ever won stunts and ensemble? Because it's almost certainly going to win stunts. Joyce might know the answer to that. I doubt it. And then secondly, what's the biggest single love of SAG voters in the past 7 or 8 years? Company-wise, what company do they love more than anything?
Searchlight?
Netflix.
And this movie, Black Panther, is not a Netflix movie, but it's been on Netflix for 3 or 4 months. They might think it's a Netflix movie. So, and it's certainly accessible to everybody on Netflix. So I just wonder if that might help it.
They also love diversity more than any other award show. I mean, Joyce mentioned Hidden Figures, and Black Panther
Idris
could be
Elba
that
too.
Crazy Rich Asians also has the diversity factor.
Well,
and they love women. They love empowering women. So both of those films have that too.
Let's not forget, these awards it's the Guild. So a couple of thousand people did the nominating, but it's over 100,000 people, the members of the Guild, that are voting. And so when you're saying they love diversity, it's because they themselves are diverse.
Sure.
You're going to have a higher percentage of women belong to SAG than belong to the Oscars. There's a higher percentage of people of color at SAG than at the Oscars. So, gosh, they're probably even more diverse than the Hollywood Forum.
It's also SAG-AFTRA now.
SAG-AFTRA,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
There's even more of them.
There's radio announcers, sportscasters,
Yeah.
weathermen. It's a mix of.
If your movie
everybody.
ensemble has movie stars and TV stars, that usually is a bellwether for
does.
it's gonna do well.
I just wanted to say,
One thing I like is that, you know, they expanded that category for a reason. It was The Dark Knight. And it's working. I mean, they don't need the popular thing.
you take the Oscars now, Susan.
Right. Yeah. And so, and it's showing that, you know, these movies can be taken seriously when done well, and having the content that, requires attention like that.
I just want to say one last thing, though, about Black Klansman. Daniel, you're saying it's been overperforming. I would argue that it's not overperforming. It's performing as it should have been. We just didn't have our eye on it. We weren't giving it its due. And I think Spike Lee has a very compelling narrative. You know, I think that yes, they gave an honorary Oscar, but there's this sense, it's kind of, could have stirrings a little bit of the old Clint Eastwood Unforgiven, overdue at the Oscars, take him seriously finally as a filmmaker.
Yeah, it's interesting that, not only has Spike Lee not won a competitive Oscar, he's never even been nominated for directing, for Best Director at least. He was nominated for a documentary, but never a nominee for Best Director, which is kind of astonishing given the small number of Black filmmakers who have been nominated for Best Director. That one of them isn't Spike Lee is a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
Let me say one other thing, and then I'll be quiet. The other movie we've been underestimating is Bohemian Rhapsody. Mm-hmm. Could it get in the 9 at the Oscars for Best Picture? Because think about one other step it has to take. I don't think it could possibly win because it's not going to win director, not going to be nominated for director anywhere, and shouldn't be. But isn't it even more popular in England and Great Britain? So it's possible it could do really well there at BAFTA.
Daniel, you wrote about it, isn't it? Didn't it? It set a record, didn't it?
It's the highest grossing LGBT movie in history, not accounting for inflation. Although it might, even when you account for inflation at this point, it might already be over that mark too. It's closing in on $200 million in domestically. It's doing incredibly well worldwide. I think it's gonna take in $500 million for a music biopic about a queer musician is kind of actually extraordinary.
Yeah. Well,
the good news is that a lot of people saw a lot of these movies. I mean, even Black Klansman did fairly well for a Spike Lee film that isn't necessarily a crime drama or anything. So
the SAG Awards will have higher ratings than the Oscars.
It's the best popular film award, the Ensemble Award.
Yeah.
Well, we opened by talking about that the site as a whole got 80% when it came to predicting. But Chris, I think you wrote that there's one user out there, somewhere out there, that I think got, 88%?
Yeah, incredible.
So we want, whoever that person is, find out who they are and copy their predictions for the winners. Though having said that, there's so few times that the person that did the best predicting the nominations does equally well predicting the winners, which is frustrating. So we have yet to find someone who's just golden when it comes to everything.
Well, that event is up, so you can start predicting the film winners right now.
Thanks.